My name is David. I am making videos about things that I like to talk about, such as the Magnus archives. Eventually I'll be talking about other things, but right now this is what has captured my attention right now. So for those of you in the know, this is my 4th installation of the Magnus Archives kill count. This is for the kill count for season 4. If you don't already know, season 4 is my favorite season of the Magnus Archives, but we're gonna get into that a little bit later. First, I want to shout out James A. Janice and his channel Dead Meat, who does the show The Kill Count, which inspired this. I really enjoy horror a lot. Really love horror, and so the Dead Meat channel is right up my alley. I love the Magnus Archives because of the horror. I love just horror in general, and so, you know, getting to talk about this is really fun. So shout out to James A. Janice and the Dead Meat channel. They inspire everything about here. Go watch their videos. They're right now. As of when I am filming this, the last thing that they put out was a kill count for the Mortal Kombat series, which is really fun. And I heard that they are going to do a Danganronpa kill count. My boyfriend says it's going to be insane, so I can't wait to watch that. So go check them out. They have much better production than whatever I have here, but hey, we are making do. Before we begin, heavy spoiler warning. I haven't said in the first 2 videos, but I will say I have said in my 3rd video, the 3rd season. And I'm saying it now again, spoiler warning. If you have not seen anything of the Magnus Archives, you will be heavily spoiled. This is for season 4, so we're getting to the end game anyways. But yes, spoiler warning. Before I begin, I just want to set some rules first. In terms of what, who, why, what I'm counting. 1, they must be an important person that dies. Or 2, killed by someone important. 3, their death must have been seen or experienced in the episode. In conjunction to that, 4, they cannot be backstory. They cannot be something that was mentioned in the past that affected the character or whatever. But some exceptions to these rules is that I am counting any deaths that are thematic, or they're implying something, or they are adding to the story. For example, I counted the wife and the stepmother of the statement giver in that one Purple Rot episode because they died of a sickness and it was a corruption episode. The themes are there. So if I break any of these 4 rules, it's because of the themes and the implications that are behind it. What? What do you... Wait. Let's say hello. Hi, Murphy. Say hi, Murphy. What do you want? Do not... Out. Out. Get on. Go away. I tricked him. Because of the medium of this show, along with the transcripts which I'm reading, I have to be a little bit generous in my counting, as well as very strict. There are moments where some group of people die, and they just say a lot. I either need an exact number or like individuals, and we're gonna get to that soon. But a lot of the times they will just say something bad happened, but I don't see any individuals dying. I don't see any specifics. Like, for example, I could only really count like 2 people in the Sunken Sky ritual because we only ever saw 2 individual people in the town. And yeah, the entire town went into the pit, but they don't want to talk about it. I don't get exact numbers. I can't really say like all of the town. You know what I mean. You guys know what I mean. So if something like that comes out, I will talk about it, etc., etc. Now, welcome to the kill count for Season 4 of the Magnus Archives. Season 4 is my favorite season, as I said before. I have a video talking about why it's my favorite season, along with a ranking video. So go check those out, because I had a lot of fun making them. Season 4 is sort of, we have now all the information that we need. The 14, 15 fears, the stakes, the rituals, the people. The status quo has changed. John's team has changed. Things have changed and are going to change. And things are starting to wrap up. Things are starting to close. And we're getting to an endpoint that, as it was coming out, we didn't know what was happening, which is really exciting. Season 4 has a lot of people dying, and I can't wait to show you guys what they are. So, to begin. The first episode of Season 4, 121 Far Away, we have a whopping number of 14 kills. First, we have Dr. Thomas Pritchard, who was the chemist that Oliver Banks saw die in a motorcycle accident, and then Oliver Banks himself took his identity and then went onto the ship. And now, kills 2 through 14 were all killed by Oliver Banks. Numbers 2 through 7 are all unnamed boat crew that Oliver Banks counted. I remember him saying 6 boat crew members besides the other people, such as number 8, Captain Mick Avery, and number 9, Clara, who was the senior-most marine biologist. We also get mentions of a marine biologist, a meteorologist, an engineer, and a macroecologist who had pronouns. All of them were killed by Oliver Banks because he led them to Point Nemo and a satellite crashed through them. I've already said enough about this episode because I love this episode so much. Anyways, number 14 is Oliver Banks himself, who was his first death, I think. He doesn't die again anyways. I'm just saying, I just know that. But he did get better. Episode 122, Zombie. We have John waking up from his coma, and Basira gets him a statement, and he reads it, and it's about a lady who thinks that she starts seeing how people are just dead behind the eyes the entire time, and they're all psychological zombies. No one dies here. I'm not going to count the person that comes up to her and speaks to her because, well, she punches them through the face, and there's a hole there, and it's full of, like, spider cobwebs or whatever. But they stayed standing up, so they're not dead. Episode 123, Web Development. We have kills 15 through 17. First, we have 2 unnamed researchers that were reported by Basira to John that Peter Lucas sent away. They didn't like what he was doing in the institute, and he was like, which is, you know what I've said before in terms of people who get sent away to different things. They're good as dead. Number 17, we have the deformed spider person. I'm going to say they're good as dead. They were killed by Animal Cane because she was the one who made the guy make the Chelicerae website. And so, process of elimination, they were killed by Animal Cane. I believe, yeah, they were asking for help, and they were just filled with spiders. It was little. This one was actually kind of like what was the other one I said was like a creepypasta. This Tucked In was very creepypasta for me. This was also creepypasta, but like better. Number 18 comes from episode 124, Left Hanging. We have Otto Hessler, who was killed by Simon Fairchild. He was the person who was manning the trolley is not the right word. Whatever it was. The thing that was up in the mountains. And then Simon Fairchild was like, yank! And tosses him out the cable car. That's it. It was a cable car operator who got yanked out and started falling. I assume that he was sent away. Same thing as Free Fall with the guy who just was endlessly falling. So I'm assuming that Otto Hessler was also endlessly falling, but there's nothing really there's nothing that says anything about that. All I know is that he was yanked by like a pale hand that appeared all of a sudden. So that man's dead. Numbers 19 through 40 come from episode 125, Civilian Casualties. The order that I'll be saying these are the order that the cops discovered them as they were going through in the statement. So first we have Callum Mackenzie, who was the guy, the Bastard English was the cop, but he called him the Bastard English. He was gonna call him that. He had a pitchfork in his body, in his chest or stomach or something like that, and he was trying to grab at the cops. He dies. Then we discover an elderly woman who was stabbed through and pinned to her rocking chair. I think she was sewing at the time too. We get 2 middle-aged corpses, one has male pronouns, who were tearing at each other or had torn at each other, and their throats were slit. And it was thought that the oven woman, 23, was the one who killed them. She was found in the oven. I think her face was just burnt because she was thrust into the oven they connected it somehow to Cal Mackenzie, I believe, because she had glass all over her body and he had glass all over his hands, something like that. And then the cops follow a trail of fingers and arrive to this just mass of murder, where we can count Angus Stewart, who was the 16th Llancraig resident, the young lady from Inverness, who had the Lightner book, and then 15 other Llancraig residents in that mass. It was reported, like I said, there were 16 Llancraig residents. The other 16 were in that pile. And because we had Angus named, I'm going to say Angus is the 16th Llancraig resident. So, a lot of slaughters. This is a really fun slaughter episode too. Number 41 comes from episode 126, Sculptor's Tool. We have Mary Randall, who was killed by Deborah Madaki. Deborah Madaki was the statement giver, and she was going insane because she was trying to deal with Gabe and the worker of clay and etc. etc. Mary Randall was there too, and I think Deborah killed her because she was going insane. Numbers 42 and 43 come from episode 127, Remains to be Seen. First, we have Albrecht von Closen, who I've already talked about why this episode didn't really work for me. The implications are implicating, and I don't he either had all his Lightner books and they were fully empty, or they were full of stuff and he made them empty somehow. And then the doctor who's giving the statement, the letter, does the autopsy and his bones are full of eyes, which is gross imagery, but yeah. So I'm just gonna say he was killed by the eye. And number 43, I'm gonna be counting Martin's mother, because this was a very important person. I'm counting her. I'm counting her because of how important she is to Martin's story. Specifically, we never see her, but specifically because we had Elias / Jonah telling him that his mother hated him because he looked just like his father in season 3, because we get a lot of mentions of how not bad she was, but just how troubled their relationship was in season 5 as well. I'm gonna count his mother because she's really important to Martin's character and Martin's sort of character development, because she fucked him up that way that he is, which led up to what is happening right now with Martin. So that's why I'm going to count him. This was reported to John by Basira, because Basira was yeah, so Martin's a little off, and he's been off since his mother died. And John was oh my god, I need to go comfort him. Oh. And so yeah, I'm going to count it. Numbers 44 through 49 come from episode 128, Heavy Goods. This is Brecken's story, extracted from Brecken, told by John. These kills were, so trying to find out the dates of these kills, which I'm not counting the dates anymore, I'm not telling the dates anymore at least, was really fun trying to figure that out. And so at least we have mentions of individuals that bad stuff happened to them, and allusions that they died. Some of them were sort of iffy if they died or not, but it's enough that I'd be yeah, someone died here. First, we have a quartermaster who knew that Brecken and Hope, before they were called Brecken and Hope, were weird, and so Hope ate his tongue and Brecken ate his pen. Jack, who was on the boat and he tried jumping off the boat so he could die in the ocean, but Brig and Hope were like, nope, you're dying on land. 46 is the old woman who they had a silk wrapped thing of the web, and she was like silently crying and they laughed at her. We get 2 unnamed automobile first owners. Like, there were 2 people who owned a car, and Brig and Hope just stole the car and also killed those 2 people. We also have a leering banker who had gotten, I think it was it was the knife that he, like, once he took it, he started, like, he was stabbing Brig and Hope, and then he turned it on himself. And Brig and Hope were like, look at that idiot, something like that. The episode was well written, and it was fucking creepy, the entire sort of language of it. But, yeah, these kills are not as fun, honestly, but that's what we get. I know there's also mention of they had a car, and people would be trapped in the car, or, like, in a truck, or, like, something like that. People would be trapped in the car, and some of them tried to get out, some of them died. I can't count those because I don't get an individual. I also can't count when they were in the circus because sometimes they picked up kids, sometimes they put them down. I love that line. That doesn't really imply any individual, so I can't really count that. Number 50 comes from 129 Submerged. The entire statement in and of itself, no one really dies in it. However, we'll get to the however. I do want to talk about this episode. This is where we have the guy who was dealing with eviction in his old house and stuff like that, and so he was trying to move out, and he was under a lot of pressure economically, and he was trying to figure out. He got a letter that was like slightly wet to be like, hey, come check out this like place to help you, and he goes and it's all like wet stuff. The office is all wet, and there's like a lump of wet paper in like a filing cabinet. He's like, peace. It's also mentioned that the elevator was slightly cramped. And then he gets home, it's raining, it floods, he almost drowns. This is important, really important to the plot. I like this episode a lot. Anyways, no one dies in the statement. However, after the fact, John's talking about the buried, and he knows that Jan Kilbride was killed by Gertrude Robinson to stop the Sunken Sky ritual. Like, we had seen Jan and Gertrude at the Sunken Sky ritual. The statement giver had seen them. But we never got confirmation that what they were doing there. This is when we see that Jan was dismembered, killed, and then dismembered, tossed into the Sunken Sky. The way that he described it is that she could have tossed him in there while he was still alive, but she killed him before she tossed him in there, but it was still, like, bad for him. I don't know what that means. I do not know what that means, but that's terrifying. Anyways, Jan Kilbride, you were, I stan Jan Kilbride. Numbers 51 through 53 come from episode 150, Meet. We have a Gertrude episode talking to someone who witnessed the Great Feast and its subsequent destruction at Gertrude's hands. We have 2 unnamed flesh agents, individuals that the statement giver saw, 2 specific people who were moving stuff around, who died in the explosion, as well as the tall, gangly woman who I have recounted as killed by Gertrude Robinson. Gonna keep it that way. However, she's helping to move meat around, and she just collapses, and they toss her into the pit. But I'm still gonna count her as killed by Gertrude Robinson. All 3 of them were killed by Gertrude Robinson to stop the Great Feast with explosions, which is par for the course for Gertrude Robinson. Numbers 44 and 45 come from episode 131, Flush. First, we have Regan Hasnian, who was told to John by Jared Hopworth that he was told to go to other people, take their bones. We find out later that it was Elias / Jonah who was telling him to do that. Either way, we don't get any mentions of anyone else except for this person, Reagan Hastian, whose bones were jumped or something like that. I'm just gonna say that they died. She died. So, and then we get another unnamed flesh agent, this time the flesh agent that attacked the Institute, who was killed by Melanie King, who I wish we got more kills by Melanie, but we only have that one kill, unfortunately, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, this was when the flesh attacked, she found a knife. She just found a knife. I assume she found a slaughter knife, or she had slaughter power coming off of her into the knife, something like that. She killed the flesh agent. We only get one, or as far as I'm aware, he mentions that she killed some of them. I'm only gonna count one because at least one died. Episode 132, Entombed. This is probably the episode that really got to me when I first listened to it. This is when John goes into the coffin to save Daisy. No one dies here. A lot of terrifying things happen here. So, I'm not gonna discount it because no one died here, but like, also, no one's allowed to die in the coffin, which is terrifying. Moving on. Numbers 56 through 65 come from episode 133, Dead Horse. Beating that dead horse. This is the person who's describing the Everchase, which is, I think, my favorite. No, it's not my favorite ritual, but it's a really interesting ritual. We have 10 unnamed Everchasers who, well, 8 of them were killed by vampires in the Everchase, and 2 of them who died from exhaustion and hunger. These were reported on by the statement giver himself. These kills are not unique, but they're there. No one named was killed, unfortunately, but we have what we have. Number 66 comes from episode 134, Time of Revelation. We have Garland Hillier. This is an implication that he died. Adler Decker says that he talks to this woman who found Garland Hillier's apartment, and she went into the apartment and then came out through a different door, and it sent her into this like extinction world. And then she came back out, and so it's sort of, so the implication is that Adler Decker says that he wishes that wherever she might go, that she might be able to find the door back to our world. However, it doesn't look like Garland Hillier did. And that's the implication. I like it a lot. I do like that implication a lot. It's implied that the statement giver does die eventually, or that she will die eventually, but we don't have any confirmation or anything like that, so no, I cannot count her out. I can only count Garland Hillier. Numbers 67 through 69 come from episode 135, Dark Matter. This is where Manuela Dominguez is giving her statement, well, had given her statement like 4 years prior, I believe, to the Institute / Gertrude / Elias. John's reading it, and he's like, there's a lot of threat in here that I don't think they would have threaded and waited 4 years for the threat to come about, so I think it fully failed. But either way, first we have Manuela's mother and Manuela's father. I'm going to say that they were killed by Manuela Dominguez because she like comes up and just finds them when they were dying, and then like tells them about the dark or whatever. They were thematic and important to the story, which is why I'm counting. And then we have the unlucky Nyctophobe, who was killed by Manuela Dominguez as well. This was the 4th person on the Daedalus expedition. We all thought there were only 3. We all thought there was only 3 people in the Daedalus expedition into space. Carter Chilcott, Jan Kilbright, and Manuela Dominguez, but no, there's a 4th person trapped in a box where they were just afraid of the dark, and Manuela used that fear to create the Dark Star. Which, you know, in hindsight, not even, like, just thinking about it now, it's not that scary. But hearing that there was a 4th person in that expedition, oh my gosh, that chilled me so hard. So, they eventually die, and she has the Dark Star. Woo! Number 70 comes from episode 136, The Puppeteer. We have Neil Lagoria, who was killed by Annabelle Kane. This was when she appears... No, the statement giver is trying to like help Nilgorio live because he's having his body's not working. So she puts up strings on him, and then like the strings begin to like fuse into his body, and she has to deal with that. And then Annabelle Cain shows up, and she's like, "Ha ha ha! I'm evil." And then the statement giver's watching his movies and is there for like months on end without even realizing it. And then Annabelle Cain like wraps Nilgorio up in like silk in a cocoon, takes him away. For what reason? I do not know. But that happened. That happened. Number 71 through 85 come from episode 137, Nemesis. We have, just because of how it's talked about, we have some specifics and some allusions to, and so I'm just going to take them a little slowly. We have 12 unnamed Japanese soldiers, 5 of which were specific individuals that we witnessed to be murdered, and because the statement giver said that they were dozens of them on the beach, I'm only going to count at least 12, so, seeing those 5 individuals, and I filled out the other soldiers as well. We have Soldier 1, who killed Soldier 2 by severing his arm, he was the commander, and then Soldier 3, who kills Soldier 1, and then Soldier 3 is killed by other Japanese soldiers, sort of, that's what we assume. And then Soldiers 4 and 5, who kill each other in, like, a mutual sort of thing. The rest are unnamed assumptions. And then we get onto the Nemesis itself, which is where we have a lot less people to be able to count. We have a bunch of POWs just killing each other, but we don't get as many individuals or a full like estimation of a number, like a dozen or 100 or whatever. We have Milton, who was killed by Leonard Holden, and then Leonard Holden, who was killed by another POW, and I'm putting that POW onto the list because also he would eventually have been killed as well. So that's all that I can really count. And yes, it's a little iffy. However, this is a good episode, so we're just going to accept it as it is. Number 86 comes from episode 138, The Architecture of Fear. We have Robert Smirk, who is killed by Jonah Magnus. He sent a letter to Jonah, half and half, to tell him about the bad stuff that has been happening to him, his dreams, and the things he keeps seeing about the eye. And 2, to talk about his sort of thoughts about the fears and like his taxonomy and etc. etc. I like the taxonomy part. I don't care for him being like terrorized by the eye. I don't care about him. That man, I don't care. He gets killed eventually. I don't know how, but I'm just gonna say he was killed by Jonah Magnus because it was all like implied that it was all Jonah Magnus all behind that. Number 87 through 91 comes from episode 139, Chosen. We have Eugene Vanderstock telling the Institute about Agnes Montague's upbringing and also his sort of backstory. I don't know who this man is. I don't care about him. But we do get some deaths. We have Glenn Dunlop and the Dunlop mother, who were all killed in the Blitz because, these weren't really important people or whatever, but, thematics in terms of desolation, and this is what got Eugene into the desolation. I'm going to count those 2. We also have, for number 89, Eileen Montague, who was Agnes Montague's mother. I'm not counting the father because I don't get a name or a date or whatever. I just know that he had died prior. We didn't see it, so I'm not counting him. Eileen gave birth as she was being on flames or something like that. Yeah, she was killed by the Lightless Flame cult. So, and then we have an unnamed Lightless Flame cultist who was killed by Agnes Montague. This is sort of like the one Eugene was talking about, how like sometimes the cult member died at her while they were caring for her. No specific name, no specific numbers, but I'm just going to count at least one of them because we know it happened at least once. Same sort of logic for an unnamed foreign worker who was killed by Eugene Vanderstock, who like works in the factory, and he finds him and he just like takes him and like condenses him into a candle for Agnes. We know that eventually Eugene disappears. John says he's still working at that factory, but we find out a little later that that's not exactly true. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. Number 92 comes from episode 140, The Movement of the Heavens. We have Maxwell Rayner, who was killed by John Flamsteed. This is his first death because John Flamsteed kills him, drowns him in the pool of brackish water, and then Maxwell Rayner is like, ha ha ha, I am evil now and blind. Yeah, I don't care for this episode. Numbers 93 to 97 comes from episode 141, Doomed Voyage. First, we have Jesus, who was killed by Mikhail Salesa. I realized as I was editing that I kept saying Michael Salesa for some reason, which is just wrong. Sorry. Mikhail Salesa, who I believe was like, so John is on the ship with Basira, and he sees a guy, and he's like, you know stuff, give me. And so that's the guy who's telling him about his last voyage with Mikhail Salesa. So he says that Jesus was just a guy who was too snoopy for his own good, and Mikhail tossed him off the ship. Number 94 is Gantulga, who I think was also looking through something, or I don't know, I feel like it was read like an accident in a way, but he encounters a carpet whose patterns move, and he's being eaten by the pattern. It's a spiral carpet. It's very, very interesting. Very, very cool thing that's happening there. He's killed by the spiral carpet, and then Mikhail just like tosses him off the boat. And then we have Christoph and Andreas and Captain Gaultier, who were all killed by Mikhail Salesa. I'm going to say it was collateral, because the three of them and Mikhail go onto an island and retrieve the camera that comes into play in season 5. Either way, they go into their we also see an entire island being destroyed by something fast, but I can't count anyone there because we don't have individuals. Either way, when the captain and Salesa come back, Christoph and Andreas are not there. They were named when they left and they came back. They were collateral. I don't know from what they died from. And then Captain Gaultier is killed by the explosion. He has like shrapnel in his head, and then he tells everyone else that Salesa is also dead, and then he dies. I'm not counting Mikhail Salesa, because we know in season 5 that he survives that. He faked his death. Yeah, so I'm counting them as being killed by Mikhail Salesa as collateral. Sort of like I can't really know what killed them, but at least the expedition that he wanted them to go on is what killed them, so that's why I'm counting them. Episode 142, Scrutiny. John is all eyes. No one dies here. This is a woman who comes in, talks to Martin about how, oh my god, I was buried alive and then saved, and then the guy who doesn't look like he slept for a while appears and makes me tell him my trauma, and I keep seeing in my dreams. No one dies here. Numbers 98 through 100, we have from episode 143, Heart of Darkness. John and Basira have gone to Naiada's sun to try to stop the dark ritual, which is not really happening, but they think that there is, and they encounter Manuel Dominguez, and she tells them about the things that have happened. We get to count the still and lightless beast, who she said that they had to sacrifice for the extinguished sun ritual years prior. We also know that there are human sacrifices. I can't count how many. I can only count one human sacrifice killed by Manuel Dominguez. And that's all sort of in the statement in and of itself. And then after the statement happens, Manuela escapes. I feel like she punches someone. I can't really sure. But she escapes. Basira shoots at her, chases after her. And then Helen appears, and Helen's like, ah ha ha ha. So no, she's not gone. She walked into Helen's door. And Helen is like, oh yes, I can eat her. So I'm counting Manuel Dominguez as dead. No full confirmation. However, because we know that people go into the halls and they die in there, the distortion eats them. I'm gonna say that Manuela is killed here, unless we get any further implication that she doesn't appear ever again. And of course, if she goes into Helen's domain, Helen's corridors, she's killed by Helen Distortion. Number 101 and 102 comes from episode 144, Decrypted. We have the statement giver, Gary Boylan, who is hearing code in his music and then in his brain. And I want to say, like, the wiki says he sort of becomes like an avatar of the extinction, which I don't know how I feel about that, but it's, it's whatever. We get Gary Boylan's father and Mrs. Whitshore, who the father was found dead, and then we also, he found him exploded, and and then Mrs. Whitshore was just ash. I'm gonna say they were killed by the extinction. Something happened to them, but yeah, those are the people that died. Numbers 103 to 106 we have from episode 145, Infectious Doubts. This is when Arthur Nolan comes and talks to Gertrude Robinson about his sort of deal and the deal with Agnes Montague, etc., etc. The voice acting here is great. We have an elderly tenant, the elderly tenant's son, the elderly tenant's stepdaughter, all killed by Arthur Nolan because he trapped them in like the room and then like set it on fire or whatever. And Gertrude's like, I don't want to hear this. And then we have Eugene Vanderstock, who John was like, yeah, so after this I sort of like looked into it, and no, he's just disappeared, and there is a full statue that is made of wax and sawdust missing its head. He was killed by Gertrude Robinson. He was made into this, like, she tells Nolan comes and threatens her, and she's like, so what do you think Eugene is? And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, go look into it and I'll be here. And then he leaves and comes back and she's like, so, are you afraid yet? And he's like, yes. And then they're on like equal footing. They're like talking like friends. I kind of like that a lot. Anyways, yeah, Eugene Vanderstock is in constant pain in a statue. But par for the course for Gertrude Robinson. Number 107 comes from episode 146, Threshold. We have Marcus Mackenzie, who was killed by Helen Distortion. She says that, this is where I remember she said that she wishes that she was able to get Paul Mackenzie, but he just died from a stroke. But, like, Marcus Mackenzie was being trailed by the corridors and the door throughout his entire life. And so John was like, goes up to Helen and he's like, hey, where is he? Why didn't you tell me about this or whatever? And she's like, listen, I was chasing after the Mackenzies long before I was even Michael. And she couldn't get Paul, and then once she became Helen, she was like, I am done playing around. So that she just took him. Episode 147, Weaver. This is where Annabelle Kane tells, or has a statement that she gives to John, like she makes John find in Hilltop Road, and tells about her story. No one dies here. I'm not going to be able to count the woman who was addicted to stuff or whatever, and she was like on the loom in that fish and chip shop. And there was a spider at the top, and Annabelle was like, I'm not going to tell you what I saw, but let's just say at some point the side of the spider is not entirely spider, or something like that. And it's like, yeah, there's baby spiders on it. She got arachnophobia. That's all. Yeah, we get it. Number 108 comes from episode 148, Extended Surveillance. We have Samson Stiller, who was consumed by CCTV cameras. A really good eye episode. I've said before, eye episodes don't really get to me at all. They're kind of boring. But this is a really good eye one. 109 comes from episode 149, Concrete Jungle. We have Dr. Nikos Anastos, who was killed by a stone serpent. This was when the two scientists, they're all scientists, I think. You go to the Amazon and they find a place that was trash, made into a village. The extinction manifests, and he gets bitten by a stone serpent, and then he starts like vomiting cement and dies from that. Wicked. This is wicked cool. 110 we have from episode 150, Kolbesak. We have Yotunde Uthman, who killed herself after being trapped in the lonely. She, the statement giver finds her in the house of the never-ending suburbia, and she has her face smashed into the window because she's like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then he looks into her and he's like, yeah, as far as I'm aware, no one realized that she disappeared, which is really sad, which is the lonely. Episode 151, Big Picture, we get Kill 111. A lot happens in this episode. We have Simon Fairchild appear, talk to Martin, and he's telling them about the extinction. He tells them about the vast ritual. we have Simon Fairchild talking about his past and stuff like that. And he mentions how he's been Simon Fairchild for a handful of years, I believe 60 to 70, 80 to 90, actually. And he had made some arrangements and then tossed Mr. Fairchild on a very long fall. So I'm going to count Mr. Fairchild as the person who's killed. We also get when Simon Fairchild was an artist for Tintoretto, and he is painting the sky and he falls into the sky. That might be a Avatar transformation, but the implications aren't really there. He just, falls in love with the sky, and he falls. Actually, hold on. I had to convince myself. We also have 112, who is Simon Fairchild himself, who fell into a painting. He mentions that he worked for Tintoretto, the artist, and then he sort of was lost in the painting of the sky, and he lost his footing, and he says that he should have fallen and broken his neck, but the painting took him up, the sky accepted him in open arms, and he never looked back. I'm going to say that's death. I'm going to say that's his death, because it implied that he should have died at least, or maybe he did, but the sky, the vast, whatever. I convinced myself, and yes, so that's an addition to the list now. Numbers 113 through 115 come from episode 152, A Gravedigger's Envy. We have, for 113, Hezekiah Wakely. This is when he is telling Nathaniel Beale about his dream, about him digging graves, and he falls asleep in the grave, and then rain comes, and then mud comes and buries him, and then he embraces himself. I'm gonna say that's a death, because to become an avatar of the fears, you have to go through death and apotheosis, and if it wasn't, he says it was his dream, but it could have very much been he actually witnessed that and he just chalked it up to a dream, which is, he's like, oh, I shouldn't have survived that, but I did, because I did because of his dream logic. So I'm gonna say Hezekiah Wakely died, but then came back to life. Ooh, he became an avatar. And then we have Jacob the Baker, who Hezekiah Wakely says that because they mentioned that there's I think it's implied to be scarlet fever, but I'm not fully sure. The sickness where they look like they're dead but they're not, and so he buries him, and then Jacob the Baker is just dinging the bell to be like, hey, save me, and then Hezekiah Wakely's like, you should be sleeping, and cuts off the bell, and so that's a murder. That's a full murder and a half. And then we have Nathaniel Beale, who was killed by Hezekiah Wakely. At the end of the statement, John's like, yeah, so Nathaniel Beale is buried in this location, and the only people to know that are Hezekiah Wakely, Nathaniel Beale, and himself. And which is sick writing. That was the delivery of that, amazing. Number 116 comes from episode 153, Love Bombing. We have the Divine Chain Cult. I want to count more people who get consumed by the corruption dog, but I can only really count Joyce, who's killed by Agape. And yeah, I really want more. This is a really good episode, and I really want to count more, but I don't get an exact number at all. And Joyce would be the at least one person. So yeah, that's unfortunately all I can do for this episode. It was a really good episode. It was a really good thing with the corruption and stuff like that. We haven't had a corruption episode since the Le Petit Rabais, so yeah. 117 comes from episode 154, Bloody Mary. We have Eric Delano, who was killed by Mary Key. This was when Gertrude reads out his letter. John is like, yeah, I did not want me to listen to this statement, but here it is. And he reads it, or listens to it. And he learns that Eric was killed by Mary Key after he, tore his eyes out, stabbed his eyes out. Poor guy. Number 118 through 121 come from episode 155, Cost of Living. This is where Toba McHugh is killing people to prolong her own life. First, she had an epileptic seizure and fell down the stairs, and while she was being operated on by a doctor, she takes the doctor's life so she can stay alive. Next, we have Toba McHugh having she trips and falls in a shower and is dying in the shower, and she goes and kills an old woman that she finds. Then Toba McHugh is in a restaurant and has an allergic reaction, and she kills a young homeless man who's in the alley next door. And then I don't really remember why, but Toba McHugh's again also dying, and she kills an infant born into poverty. There are other mentions of her killing other people, but I can't count them because they're just allusions in terms of, like, she's killed mothers and pillars of the community and stuff like that, but no individuals, so I can't really count them. I can only really count the people that we saw as she was dying. 122 comes from episode 156, Reflection. We have a thin figure who was launched from a roller coaster. I'd like to think that, like, these were the people, the things that inherited the earth after humans, because they killed all the humans, they ate all the humans, and they were so thin that the roller coaster was made for humans was not able to hold the thin figure, so as the roller coaster was, the thin figure was launched out because they couldn't fit there. They fall, and then, like, a bunch of the things that inherit the earth eat it. And yeah, that's a death. That's definitely, like, it's also alluded to that the statement giver, the guy who was trying to look for the rave, is being followed by a thing in the mirror that he saw first. But we don't get any sort of confirmations in terms of death. Numbers 123 to 152 come from episode 157, Rotten Coal. This is where Adelard Decker is following leads of some of what he expects to be some sort of extinction appearance, but in reality he just finds a bunch of sick people. First, he finds a lamppost victim who's just sort of, like, wasting away on the lamppost. They're still alive, their heart's still beating, but no, they're I mean, eventually they die. But yeah, we have a woman in the bed who's decomposing, and we also have an old man watching television. And then we get 24 unnamed bodies on the throne of John Amherst, who has killed all of those people. Adelard Decker mentions that he, like, looks and he says he counts a dozen, 24 people onto that throne, and there might be more, but because he says 24, that's 24, that's total people in that throne right now. So yeah, all of those people were killed by John Amherst. So we have Adelard Decker witness all of that, sees John Amherst, stabs him with some fertilizer, paralyzes him some way, and then buries him in cement. So John Amherst is finally dead, killed by Adelard Decker. We get confirmation later in season 5 where John tells Martin that eventually, without any sort of fear, John Amherst just sort of wasted away and died in the concrete. So he's dead. We also get Herr Becker, who was don't know if he was one of the people in the throne or elsewhere, but we do get, like, Adelard Decker going into his house, and thankfully Herr Decker didn't log out of his computer, so he was able to send this message to Gertrude Robinson. And then Adelard Decker himself wastes away and dies, killed by John Amherst. Technicalities here. Technically, all those people in the village are dying and sick because Adelard Decker sees them and their hearts are still beating. There's a bunch of people on the throne that are just, like, melded onto the throne, and they are making sound that they're still alive and in pain and stuff like that. He kills John Amherst, and then he, like, sets all the, takes all the bodies that he finds, puts them onto a pile, sets it all ablaze. Technically, Adelard Decker kills all of them. However, that feels worse. That feels not good, because Adelard Decker is a force of good. And I would love to say that he killed a bunch of people, but these people were suffering because of John Amherst. So I'm going to say that they were killed by John Amherst, but technically they were at least put out of their misery by Adelard. I love Adelard Decker. I wish he did more, but it is what it is. And we get a bunch of kills for John Amherst. Good for John Amherst, honestly. For a man who I didn't really care for in the first watch through, I'm appreciating him a lot more now. Number 153 comes from episode 158, Panopticon. Finally, I can count Gertrude Robinson, who's killed by Jonah Magnus. She was trying to stop she knew that the extinguished sun ritual was not going to work, so she was like, I'm just going to wait and see, and also foil Jonah Magnus's plan. And Jonah/Elias were like, no, and shoot her 3 times. We only hear the first shot. It's because when they were making it, they forgot she was shot 3 times. But whatever. We finally are able to count Gertrude Robinson onto the list. A lot also happens in 158. John, Basir, and Daisy dealing with Trevor and Julia attacking, and then Peter Lucas is down in the tunnels with Martin, and Peter Lucas sets off not Sasha, and not Sasha's doing stuff, and there's a whole attack on the Institute. We don't know if anyone else died in that. There's just screams and gunshots, and that's it. I can't count anyone else in that attack. I can only really count, finally, Gertrude Robbins. That's the important part for me, that like after this is episode 158, 158 episodes since we first heard that she died, finally, Gertrude Robinson has died. 159, the last, we have killed 154, and the last killed 155. 154 is the green raincoat man who's killed by Peter Lucas. Peter Lucas is telling John, is forced to tell John about his life and how he dealt with the lonely and stuff like that. And he's like walking on like a beach someday, and this guy in a green raincoat comes up and he tries to talk to him, and Peter Lucas just makes him leave, and he does. And he's not sure if he himself went into lonely or the guy went into the lonely. I'm going to say it's more thematic that the guy went into lonely because we've seen Peter Lucas send other people away anyways. And so, guy is lost and lonely. You know my logic, you know my reasoning. Guy's pretty much good as dead. And then finally, 155, we have Peter Lucas, who was killed by John Sims. John Sims tries to make him tell him about Jonah's plan, and Peter is like, no, I will not. And just by sheer force of will, Peter Lucas does not tell John, and because of that, dies. Which is sick. So cool. And just to wrap it up, episode 160, the eye opens. No one dies in this episode, but a lot of bad things happen. I already talked a lot about this. I love this episode. Great finale. Great setup for season 5. In season 4, we have a total of 155 people killed. With 155 people in 40 episodes, we get an average kill of 3.875 kills per episode. This is the total kills for season 4. This is everyone who killed someone and their kill count itself. The leaderboards for season 4 include John Amherst with a total of 29 people killed, Oliver Banks with 13, and Breakin and Hope in 3rd place with 6. Gertrude racks up a number of 5 kills in this season. Notable people outside of the leaderboard, we have Manuel Dominguez with 4 kills, Peter Lucas and Arthur Nolan with 3 kills each, Annabelle Kane and Helen Distortion and Jonah Magnus and Simon Fairchild with 2 kills each. Ilar Decker in the 1 kill bracket. I just like him, so I'm mentioning him. John Sims with 1 kill, and Iden Montague with 1 kill, and Melanie King as well. She needs more kills, in my opinion. And this is a gender breakdown for season 4, pretty much very similar to other breakdowns of other seasons. We have 23 women killed, 58 men killed, 2 monster kills, and 72 unknown kills, most of them within the Slaughter episode, as well as John Amherst's kill. As I mentioned prior, I will also be updating the total kills. So for seasons 1 through 4, these are the leaderboards. I will be cutting it off at 4 kills for season 4. So we have Robert Montauk still in the lead with 41 kills. We have John Amherst with 35 kills in 2nd place, and then Annabelle Kane gets knocked down to 3rd place with 21 kills. Notable people outside of the top 3 are Helen Distortion, creeping up with 5 kills, Gertrude Robinson reaching up into the 10 people killed, and Oliver Banks follows Annabelle Kane right behind with 13 kills. And this is a gender breakdown for seasons 1 through 4. Also very similar. At some point, the sheer amount of people, the graph starts becoming the same, looking the same, but this is what we have. So far, in seasons 1 through 4, 70 women have died, 191 men have died, 12 monsters have died, and 184 unknown gender people have died. I'm going to say that it's going to stay the same during season 5, but it's still very fun to sort of visualize this way. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching season 4. I love season 4 so much, and counting this so far, this is the most people on the list. A lot of it has tended to be unknown kills, but it all makes up for in how good the season is. Honestly, I enjoyed the season a lot, and I really had a lot of fun counting these kills for you guys. So keep an eye out for season 5's kill count and the final rankings of the people killed and all that jazz and all that math. I'm working on a season 5 retrospective, and it's in its subsequent ranking video, because I gotta do a ranking video. I gotta, you know? But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe and all that jazz. Share with your friends, share with other people who like the Magnus archives. And don't go sailing into Point Nemo, because if you get killed by a satellite, I assure you, you won't be getting better. Thank you.